What's up, explorers? This week we're going to try something not so new. My original video that I had planned is not finished yet, and it's pretty time consuming. I've been having a lot of filming issues, so because of this I've decided to switch it up a bit and try something that I'm going to call side quests, which is videos that maybe are a topic that I've already done, I've tried, but want to make a video about. And this week's is going to be coding a web page. So without further ado, let's get started. So just a little disclaimer, I am not a professional and this is not necessarily a tutorial, though I will be explaining some stuff the best I can. I did go to college for website and development, though they didn't really teach me JavaScript, they mainly taught me the basics. So I have learned a lot of what I know on my own. Which means it may not be perfect, it might not be the best way you can do it, so I'm not going to promise that this is the best way you can code this website or this web page. However, if you're someone who is interested in this or wants to get started or already has gotten started, and maybe you're looking for some ideas on how to lay out your web page, this video could be for you. And maybe we can have some fun on the way and learn from each other. So the web page I'm creating today is one that is going to be part of my journal website. This is something I've been wanting to do for a really long time, but just haven't gotten around to it. And what we're going to be building today is what I'm going to call a watch list. Something that's really big in my life is entertainment. YouTube videos, movies, shows, and something I like to do is keep track of what I've watched. So I wanted to create a page that would organize all the shows, all the movies, anything that I've watched, and have the ratings, what I thought of it, when I watched it, and when I finished it. So the first thing we're going to do is create a document, and I'm going to save it in my project folder and give it a name. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the HTML template into my document. Now let's give our web page a title. I'm going to call it Watchlist because this page is the Watchlist page. Now inside the head, I'm linking to Font Awesome, so I can use their chevron icons later. And I'm also going to add a style tag where I'll write all the CSS for this page. Now, if this was a bigger project, I would separate these styles into their own style sheet, but because this is pretty small, I'm going to keep it in this document. Now, let's start creating the actual page. Inside the body, I'm adding a main heading, My Watch List. This is just the title of the page. Next, I'm going to create a div with the class category. This is going to hold one entire section of the watch list. In my case, the C-drama tier list. Inside that, I'm adding a header with a title and a little arrow icon. This header is what the user will click to expand or collapse the whole category. Right under the header, I'm adding a div with the class content. This is the part that will open and close. Inside that, I'm creating a tier list container, and then I'll add each tier one by one. Each tier is its own div with the class tier. Inside it, I'm adding a tier header, again with a label and arrow icon. This header works just like the category header. It's clickable and it controls the visibility of the tier's content. Inside each tier, I'm adding a tier content div. This is where the actual entries go, the shows, movies, or whatever you're tracking. Each entry is a little card with a poster image on the left and a grid of labels and values on the right. I'm using a CSS grid to keep everything aligned. I've got fields for title, watch date, rewatch date, rating, and a comment. However, if you would make this, you can customize it however you want. The nice thing about this is that this one entry is reusable, so I can copy this entry as many times as I want and customize it based on what I need inside the sections. This also goes for the tiers themselves. I can copy those and put the 5 tiers that I am looking for, or as many as you would want if you're making this, and customize those based on what I need too. Now let's style this so it looks clean and modern. I'm setting the stage using a soft background. Then I'm going to use the Inter font and give everything a generous padding. These styles are what I would call global styling. So we're going to set up the body, H1s, and H2s. H1s are basically headings. The category and tier cards get rounded corners and a subtle shadow to lift them off the page. Now here's the important part, the collapsible sections. I'm giving the styles content and tier content a transition on max height. This is what makes the open and close animation smooth. I'm also adding a collapsed class that rotates the arrow icon when a section is closed. Now what I'm doing is I'm making sure that each tier is a different color. So each section of the tiers are different colors using the child method. For the entries, I'm using a 3-column grid, the poster, the labels, and the values. The poster spans the full height of the card, which gives it a nice structured look. Now let's make everything interactive. I'm starting with a function called expand section. When a section opens, I set its max height to its scroll height, basically the full height of all content inside. That triggers the CSS transition. Then, once the animation finishes, I remove the max height limit so the content can grow naturally. Next is collapse section. Here I first set the max height to the element's current height, so the browser knows where to animate from. Then I set it to 0 on the next animation frame. That gives us a smooth closing animation. Now I'm selecting all the categories headers and all the tier headers. For each one, I start them in collapse state by default. Then I add a click event listener that toggles the collapse class and calls either expand or collapse depending on the state. Now to someone like me, that's pretty confusing. So I try and think of it in a different way. So think of each category and tier as a folder. The header is the little tab you grab. The content inside is the stack of papers, and the JavaScript is basically deciding whether the folder is open or closed. So when I write this function called expand section, that's like pulling the folder open. I'm telling the browser, hey, open this up just enough to show all the papers inside. That's why I set the max height to the element scroll height. That's the full height of the content. Then I remove the height limit once it's open so the folder can hold more papers if I add them later. Now for the collapse section function, this is like pushing the folder closed. I first measure how tall it is right now, and then I smoothly shrink it down to 0. That's what creates the nice closing animation. Finally, I attach click listeners to all the headers, so when someone clicks a header, it's just like grabbing the folder tab. The code checks whether it's open or closed, and then either expands it or collapses it. So now that that's all done, let's look at what we have so far. We have one tier list. But what if I want more than one tier list? Well, that's pretty easy. I can just take the category and copy and paste it. Then I can change all the information and it will be another tier list. Now let's say I don't want a tier list. Maybe I just want a normal list. Well, what you can do is you can change the tier list and have it categorized. So maybe I want a movies list. Well, what I can do is I can change the tier label to maybe comedy or horror or whatever label you want, and then put the list entries underneath it still, and you won't have to change any of the actual code, just the information inside of it. So basically how the structure of my web page works is at the top level I have a category. In this case, it's called C-Drama Tier List. Inside that category, there are collapsible content section. Inside that, I have multiple tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and so on. And inside each tier, I can add entries for individual shows. Each tier has a header you can click, and each entry is a little card with a poster, title, rating, and comments. That encompasses all of the HTML. Now, what encompasses the CSS is the soft pastel backgrounds, rounded cards, shadows for depths, a grid layout for each entry, and the little arrow icons that rotate when a section collapses. Then, the JavaScript ensures that everything works properly and is interactive. With that, this is what we end up with. That is it for the video, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a different style video this week, but you'll have to let me know in the comments what you thought. I do have a special announcement. We finally have a Discord server, and soon enough we'll have a Stoat server and a root server, depending on what platform you use. There'll be a link in the description if you want to join. That is it, and I'll see you in the next one.